Plato warned us, but we ignored him. Now we're living in his nightmare. You might think democracy ends with a coup, tanks in the streets, a dictator on TV, a constitution torn in half. But that's not how it dies in the real world. That's too obvious, too cinematic. Democracy dies more quietly, while we're distracted, while we're entertained, while we convince ourselves everything's still working because the rituals are still intact. The vote still happens. The politicians still debate. The headlines still say breaking. But something vital has already been lost. What we're witnessing isn't the overthrow of democracy. It's the hollowing out of it. And the terrifying part is that we're not just letting it happen. We're cheering it on. We're participating in our own decline, one click, one scroll, one outrage cycle at a time. Over 2,000 years ago, Plato mapped out this exact collapse. Not as a hypothetical, but as a predictable progression. He argued that societies move in cycles, from aristocracy to timocracy, to oligarchy to democracy, and finally, to tyranny. And for Plato, democracy wasn't the pinnacle. It wasn't the solution. It was the final stage before the fall. Sounds backwards, right? We treat democracy like the goal, the ideal state, the end of history. But Plato saw it differently. He believed that too much freedom, when unmoored from wisdom, virtue, and order, leads directly to its opposite. He wrote, "The excess of liberty, whether in states or individuals, seems only to pass into excess of slavery." And he meant it. He believed that in a democracy, people become so obsessed with freedom, so addicted to choice, so allergic to restraint, that they begin to reject all forms of hierarchy, all forms of authority, even the ones designed to preserve order. Rules feel oppressive. Discipline becomes optional. Expertise is suspect. Eventually, every desire becomes valid. Every voice demands equal weight, even the foolish, even the destructive. Think about that for a second. In Plato's view, democracy doesn't collapse because it's too weak. It collapses because it becomes too free. Freedom without boundaries dissolves into chaos. And when the chaos becomes unbearable, people beg for someone to fix it. They don't ask for truth, they ask for control. And they hand it to the person loud enough, confident enough, and ruthless enough to take it. That's how tyranny emerges. Not from conquest, from exhaustion. The democratic citizen, Plato warns, is easily seduced by pleasure, by novelty, by distraction. They grow soft, cynical, detached. And as the system begins to fray, they don't resist. They retreat into comfort, into entertainment, into passive consumption. They don't want responsibility anymore. They want simplicity. And so the demagogue rises, not as a tyrant, but as a man of the people. He tells them what they want to hear. He points to enemies. He mocks the elites. He promises to restore the greatness they believe they've lost. And the people follow, not because they're evil or stupid, but because they're tired, because they're afraid, because it feels easier. But let's pause here. We like to think we're immune to this, that in modern democracies, with our checks and balances and our institutions and our legal protections, we've outgrown Plato's warnings. But have we? Let's look closer. Are our elections guided by reasoned debate or by emotional manipulation? Are our leaders chosen for competence or for their ability to dominate the news cycle? Do we reward character or charisma? Do we want truth or do we want validation? Look at how politics functions now. It's less about ideas and more about identity. Every issue is a loyalty test. Every disagreement becomes a threat. We don't argue to understand, we argue to win, or worse, to perform. And that's not a bug. That's the design. Our modern attention economy thrives on polarization. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. Fear outperforms fact. The systems we interact with daily, the platforms, the feeds, the algorithms, they don't care about democracy. They care about engagement. And engagement is driven by conflict. So what do we get? Leaders who don't govern, they brand. Citizens who don't deliberate, they meme. Institutions that don't protect, they posture. And a public so overwhelmed with noise, it stops paying attention to substance. That's not democracy, that's spectacle. And it's exactly what Plato feared. Because once the line between truth and performance blurs, once every political act becomes a show, the stage is set for the one who can act the part most convincingly, regardless of the consequences. The demagogue doesn't rise because he's brilliant. He rises because he understands the game. He speaks in absolutes. He offers certainty. He doesn't ask the people to think. He tells them they're already right, and they love him for it. This is the slow death, the erosion, the quiet unraveling of democratic culture. Not with soldiers and violence, but with apathy and algorithms. With cynicism masquerading as wisdom. With freedom twisted into chaos. And chaos mistaken for freedom. And once that threshold is crossed, it doesn't matter how many votes are cast, how many laws are passed, how many flags are waved. The machinery still runs, but the spirit is gone. You're left with the shell of a democracy, one that looks familiar, sounds familiar, even uses the same language. But underneath, it's something else entirely. Plato warned us, when the people no longer trust their leaders, and the leaders no longer respect the people, the foundation cracks. When truth becomes a matter of taste, and virtue is seen as weakness, collapse isn't a question of if, it's a matter of when. And if we don't recognize those cracks right now, we might not get the chance later. So, what happens next? If Plato was right, and history seems to agree, the next phase isn't renewal. It's tyranny, but not the kind with secret police and midnight arrests. At least, not at first. It begins with something far more subtle: convenience. A collapsing democracy doesn't demand obedience. It makes obedience attractive. The strongman doesn't silence critics outright. He drowns them in noise. He doesn't ban opposition. He ridicules it into irrelevance. He doesn't need to control the press if no one believes the press. He doesn't have to rewrite the laws. Just reinterpret them until they no longer mean anything. And the public? They don't resist. They adapt. Because life still feels normal on the surface. There are still elections, still schools, still grocery stores and weekend plans. But underneath, the rules are changing. Truth becomes partisan. Law becomes selective. Fear becomes familiar. The system learns how to survive without legitimacy. It learns to manufacture the appearance of consent while stripping away its substance. And the people, distracted, outraged, or just worn out, let it happen. Because collapse doesn't come with a warning label. It comes disguised as stability. It tells you things are fine, that things have always been this way, that this is the price of progress. And by the time you feel the full weight of what's been lost, you've already accepted too many compromises to turn back. So how do we stop it? That's the question Plato leaves us with. Because while he diagnosed the disease, he didn't offer a simple cure. His solution, Philosopher Kings, was more fantasy than blueprint. But buried in his work is a deeper truth. Democracy can't be saved by politics alone. It has to be saved by culture, by people. It has to be saved by us. The real defense against collapse isn't found in elections. It's found in attention, in education, in courage. It starts by rejecting the easy path, the seductive clarity of blame, the comfort of distraction, the fake strength of outrage. It means refusing to become numb. It means training ourselves to tolerate complexity, to ask harder questions, to resist the urge to win arguments, and instead start seeking truth, even when that truth humbles us. And that's not easy, especially not now. Because the systems we live in, the tech, the media, the tribal incentives, they're designed to keep us reactive, to keep us angry, scrolling, addicted to identity politics and dopamine hits. They exploit our need to belong. They hijack our fear of being wrong. But that's where the work begins. That's where democracy actually lives. Not in the ballot box, but in the space between people, in the conversations we avoid, in the responsibility we take, in the quiet moments when we decide to look deeper instead of lashing out. If democracy is a mirror of its people, then its survival depends on what we're willing to see. Are we willing to see how easily we're manipulated? How quickly we abandon principle for comfort? How often we reward those who entertain rather than those who lead? Are we willing to confront our own complicity in the decline? Because it's not just corrupt elites or broken institutions or bad actors. It's us. It's how we consume, how we react, how we disengage. It's how we choose spectacle over substance, again and again. And if we want to change the trajectory, we have to become the kind of citizens democracy needs, not just the kind it tolerates. We have to build resilience, intellectual resilience, emotional resilience, the ability to hear uncomfortable truths without shutting down, the strength to speak when it costs us something, the wisdom to know when we're being manipulated, and the courage to stop playing along. And we have to start now, because the collapse won't announce itself. It won't come with sirens. It will come dressed as entertainment, as satire, as just politics, as the same old story, replayed again with better branding. It will come as everything you already tolerate, just a little more extreme, a little more normalized, a little harder to reverse. And then one day you'll realize the decisions are being made without you. The conversations are scripted. The institutions are hollow. The freedom you thought you had was conditional. And the democracy you believed in, the one you trusted to endure, was lost not because it was taken, but because it was neglected. Plato warned us. He saw how the seeds of collapse are planted not by enemies, but by apathy. Not by force, but by distraction. He saw how democracies die not with revolutions, but with the slow decay of civic virtue. He saw us, thousands of years before we ever existed. So now we're left with the question he couldn't answer for us. Will we wake up? Or will we scroll straight into the fall?